Everyone adored him on screen, the scruffy hero, the loyal friend, the heartbeat of an American legend. But behind the warm grin of Festus Hagen was a man shaped by shadows, betrayals, and secrets Hollywood never dared to speak aloud. Before fame, before the spotlight, Ken Curtis carried a truth far darker than anyone imagined, one that changed everything. A childhood behind bars, the boy who learned humanity among the condemned. Before Hollywood ever polished his name into legend, Ken Curtis was just a small boy living above a world most parents would never let their children near. His nights weren't filled with lullabies or warm stories. They were scored by the cold, echoing clang of iron doors slamming shut beneath his feet. While other children dreamed of cowboys, Ken drifted to sleep above real outlaws, listening to their whispered arguments, their regrets, their trembling pleas swallowed by the darkness. His father, Sheriff Dan Gates, upheld the law with a stern but steady hand. His mother cooked for the inmates with a gentleness that defied the bars separating them. And in that strange intersection, between authority and compassion, Ken learned lessons no school could teach. He saw hardened men soften over a plate of food. He watched his mother speak to prisoners as if they were simply neighbors who had gone astray. And in those small exchanges, the boy discovered a truth society preferred to ignore. Even the condemned still carried pieces of humanity worth recognizing. Life outside the jailhouse was no kinder. The Great Depression squeezed Lamar, Colorado, until hope felt like a luxury few could afford. But music became Ken's escape hatch. He sang in churches, school halls, dusty community rooms, anywhere someone would listen. His warm, steady voice became the only door out of confinement that he understood. His parents pushed him toward medicine, toward stability, toward a future built on certainty. He tried to follow their path, forcing himself through college lectures that felt like someone else's life. But the same instincts sharpened by years of listening to men behind bars, the awareness of truth, the refusal to live in a cage, told him he couldn't stay. So he walked away from medical school. He walked toward a dream no one else believed in. And with that single choice, the boy raised among prisoners freed himself from the quietest jail of all, a future that never belonged to him. Little did he know, every lesson learned above those iron bars, every clank, every whisper, every glimpse of pain and dignity, would one day shape the roles he played, the morals he carried, and the man America believed they knew. But they never knew this part. Not until now. Hollywood's golden glow and the wounds he carried in silence. By the time Ken Curtis stepped into Hollywood's orbit, the town was glowing like a furnace, hot, dazzling, and dangerous to anyone who wandered too close without armor. To the outside world, it looked like the perfect paradise for a boy who'd grown up above a jail. But behind the glitter, Hollywood had teeth, and it bit down hard on anyone who didn't understand the game. Ken arrived with little more than a baritone voice and a plain-spoken honesty the town didn't quite know what to do with. Radio audiences adored him. He was warm, comforting, effortlessly real. But Hollywood didn't reward authenticity. It rewarded ambition, noise, vanity. And Ken had none of those. When director John Ford discovered him, everything seemed to change overnight. Ford was a legend, a kingmaker, a man who sculpted stars with the cold precision of a general. He saw something rare in Ken, real cowboy blood, a voice that could melt even the toughest critics, and a sincerity that couldn't be faked. Ford brought him into his inner circle, where giants like John Wayne already stood tall. To Hollywood, it looked like Ken had won the lottery. To Ken, it felt like stepping into a storm he wasn't prepared for. Ford was brilliant, but brutal. He believed humiliation could build character, that fear could sharpen talent. Ken learned to endure the director's volcanic temper, the sharp words, the long silences that felt like judgment. He took every blow quietly because he knew what true hardness looked like. He'd seen it in the eyes of men behind bars. Ford's cruelty didn't scare him, but it scarred him. Then came the marriage to Barbara Ford, John Ford's daughter. On paper, it was a fairy tale, the rising actor and the Hollywood princess. Behind closed doors, it was a slow fracture. Ken stepped into a world of elite gatherings, whispered gossip, and expectations he never felt worthy of. He was an outsider seated at a table where everyone already knew the rules but him. Their marriage stretched more than a decade, but it was a decade of tension, strain, and emotional distance. Not dramatic, not scandalous, just tired. Two people carrying different dreams until the weight finally broke them. When the divorce came, it was quiet, like everything Ken didn't want the world to see. And still, the pain didn't stop there. His earlier marriage to actress Lorraine Page had already burned out under the pressures of war, travel, and ambition. Another wound he never showed. Another reminder that fame gave nothing without taking something first. By the late 1950s, Hollywood had begun carving him into a type. The kind-hearted cowboy, the loyal sidekick, the decent man with a simple smile. But Ken, shaped by prisons and broken families, carried depths the studios never bothered to explore. He wanted meaning. He wanted roles with weight, with truth, with the shadow and light he'd seen all his life. Hollywood didn't offer that. Television, however, was about to. Just beyond the horizon, a new chapter waited, one that would turn him into an icon, test his patience like never before, and bring the 5 names that would haunt him for the rest of his life. A storm was coming, and Ken Curtis didn't even know he was standing directly in its path. If you had the chance to speak to Ken Curtis today, what would you ask the boy who grew up above a jail and became a legend America loved? The birth of Festus Hagen, the scruffy hero who carried a hidden ache. When Ken Curtis first stepped onto the Gunsmoke set in 1964, no one expected him to change the heartbeat of the show. He was hired for a single episode, one small role in a machine that had already run for 9 long seasons. Gunsmoke was James Arness's empire, a kingdom ruled by Marshal Matt Dillon's towering presence. There was no room, or so they thought, for a new voice. But the moment Ken opened his mouth as Festus Hagen, with that crooked grin, that sandpaper rasp, that strange blend of innocence and stubborn grit, America fell in love. It didn't happen slowly. It hit like a lightning bolt. Festus wasn't polished. He wasn't heroic in the classic sense. He was messy, awkward, loud, and painfully honest. And because of that, he felt real, more real than anyone expected a television cowboy to be. What no one knew was that Ken had poured his entire childhood, his entire history, into that character. The sheriff's boy who grew up above prisoners, the young man who had watched broken people searching for dignity, all of that shaped Festus's heart. But success in Hollywood is rarely gentle. Behind the cameras, tensions began to simmer. James Arness, towering and reserved, saw Gunsmoke as his domain. He respected Ken, but never embraced him. There was distance in every handshake, every blocked scene, every moment when Arness's authority overshadowed Ken's subtle brilliance. Their professionalism was impeccable. Their warmth was not. Milburn Stone, the gruff and sharp-witted Doc Adams, clashed with Ken in a different way. Stone was a craftsman, fiercely protective of his role. Ken, with his instinct for timing and nuance, often wanted deeper meaning woven into his scenes. The result? Quiet disagreements, tight smiles, and a rivalry that hummed beneath the surface like a wire pulled too tight. Still, Ken persisted. He filled Festus with humor from the radio days, timing from the stage, and moral backbone from the jailhouse floors of his childhood. He made Festus loyal, flawed, human. And audiences felt it. They wrote letters, demanded more scenes, asked for his return week after week. In many ways, Festus became the soul of Dodge City, the voice of the everyday man in a world ruled by towering heroes and dangerous villains. But the applause never silenced the ache inside Ken. He felt overshadowed, underestimated, boxed into the role of a sidekick while carrying a talent capable of much more. The scripts always circled back to Dylan, to the star, to the center of gravity Ken was never allowed to approach. On set, people noticed. They saw the way Ken lingered alone after scenes, quietly rereading scripts, adjusting his lines to find meaning where the writers hadn't given him any. They saw him eat lunch at the edge of the lot, shoulders hunched, hat pulled low. Not angry, just tired in a way only those who have spent years fighting invisible battles can understand. And yet, he stayed. Not for the fame, not for the money, but because Festus meant something to him, something he could never quite explain. In Festus, he found the man he wished more people understood him to be. Loyal without question, brave without ego, strong without cruelty. The man who helped others but never asked for help himself. For 11 years and more than 300 episodes, Ken Curtis carried Gunsmoke's heart in his hands. The scruffy deputy became a national treasure. But inside, Ken wrestled with the same silent frustration Festus often played on screen. The feeling of being essential but never central, loved but rarely recognized, present but always in someone else's shadow. He didn't know it yet, but the role that made him beloved would also lead him toward the 5 names that would haunt him for the rest of his life and shape the quiet battles of the years that followed. The spotlight had found him, but it would never be gentle. The 5 names that haunted him. Quiet rivalries, unspoken wounds. Long after the cameras stopped rolling, when interviews grew rare and the world believed Ken Curtis had made peace with his past, he began to speak, carefully, softly, about the 5 figures who had carved themselves into his memory. Not enemies, not villains, just people whose shadows stretched across his life in ways even he struggled to explain. 5 names that lingered like unfinished conversations. The first was James Arness, the towering giant of Gunsmoke. To audiences, their partnership looked seamless. Marshal Matt Dillon and the scruffy deputy who kept the town's heart beating. But privately, Ken felt the imbalance every day. Arness was respectful, distant, and fiercely protective of his territory. Ken admired him, yet could never shake the feeling of standing just outside a door that would never fully open. Their relationship wasn't cold, but it never grew warm, and that quiet distance hardened something inside Ken. Then there was Milburn Stone, Doc Adams, the gruff physician whose sharp wit made him unforgettable. But behind the scenes, he and Ken often collided like flint against steel. They argued over lines, pacing, character beats, both believing their instincts were right. These weren't explosive fights, just slow, burning tensions that tinted their scenes with an edge most viewers never noticed. Ironically, when Stone fell ill years later, Ken was one of the few who visited him privately. Resentment and compassion battling silently in the same man. The third figure was John Mantley, Gunsmoke's producer. If Arness was the walls of the kingdom, Mantley was the gatekeeper. He controlled budgets, scripts, storylines, and in his eyes, Festus was secondary, a colorful accessory rather than a core pillar. Ken fought for richer stories, deeper meaning, respect. Mantley resisted every step of the way. Their feuds simmered through seasons, a contest of pride fought behind closed doors. By the final years of Gunsmoke, they barely spoke. Not out of hatred, out of exhaustion. The fourth name surprised many, Amanda Blake, the fiery Miss Kitty. Early on, she and Ken shared warmth, jokes, easy laughter. But fame is a fragile thing, and whispers on set began hinting that Festus was becoming too beloved, too central. Rumors poisoned the air. Whether Blake truly felt threatened or whether gossip magnified every small moment didn't matter. The tension was real. Their friendship cooled. Smiles remained for the cameras, but something unspoken shifted between them forever. And then, the strangest ghost of all, Dennis Weaver, the original deputy of Gunsmoke, a man Ken had never even worked beside. Weaver left before Festus arrived, but his shadow loomed over Ken like an inherited debt. Critics compared them. Fans debated them. Letters poured in insisting one was better than the other. Ken grew tired of being measured against a man he never met. Even as Festus carved out his own legacy, the comparisons never truly stopped. It was a rivalry built entirely by the world around him, and it frustrated him more than any on-set conflict. These 5 names weren't enemies. They were reflections of the pressures shaping Ken's life, pressures he rarely spoke about, pressures that carved quiet scars into a man too gentle to fight back loudly. In the end, he carried them the way he carried everything, silently, respectfully, with a dignity shaped by a childhood spent above the condemned. They were the people who defined his journey through Hollywood, not with dramatic showdowns, but with the subtle battles no screen ever captured. What remained of those wounds at the end of his life was unclear, but the weight of those names never truly left him. Which of the 5 figures in his life left the deepest mark in your opinion, and why do you think their shadows followed him for decades?
That's what you.
The final years, a quiet rebellion and the last stand of a weary hero. When Gunsmoke finally rode into the sunset in 1975, Ken Curtis was 59, an age when many actors watched their careers crumble. But he didn't fall. He simply stepped back. With the same quiet dignity he carried his whole life, he slipped away from the blazing heat of fame and into something gentler, something truer to the boy who once lived above a jailhouse. He took small roles, appeared at Western festivals, greeted fans with that familiar crooked grin, and never once pretended to be something he wasn't. To the world, it looked like graceful aging, but beneath that calm exterior, Ken was still fighting one last battle, the battle for respect he felt Hollywood had always withheld. That moment came in 1987. CBS announced Gunsmoke, Return to Dodge, a reunion special meant to bring the old icons back together. Fans were ecstatic. They assumed Festus Hagen would ride again. They assumed Ken would return to the family he helped build over 11 years. But behind closed doors, the network offered him a salary so low it felt like an insult. A reminder of every time he had been overshadowed, underestimated, treated as a side note when he had been the heart. Ken didn't shout. He didn't fight publicly. He simply refused. It was the quietest act of rebellion Hollywood had ever seen. And in that silence was a thunderous truth. He would not play the loyal deputy in real life. Not for a studio that remembered his character, but forgot the man. Fans were shocked, some angry, most confused, but Ken wasn't. For the first time, he'd taken a stand entirely for himself, and those who truly knew him saw peace settle into his shoulders, peace built not on forgiveness, but on finally choosing self-worth. Off camera, his life softened. After 2 failed marriages, he had found Tori Connolly, a woman who had nothing to do with Hollywood's illusions. With her, he rediscovered quiet mornings, laughter without performance, and a family that didn't need spotlights to feel whole. He became a devoted stepfather, traveling, fishing, and living the kind of life that fame never allowed. Simple, steady, deeply human. He supported the political voices he believed in, Goldwater, Reagan, and never apologized for it. "A man's got to stand for something," he said once. The line sounded like something Festus might say, but this time, it was Ken speaking for himself. In 1991, his health faltered. The hard years, the quiet pain, the long battles unseen by fans, all of it had taken its toll. On April 28th, Ken Curtis passed away in his sleep, peaceful at last, in his home in Clovis, California. No spectacle, no Hollywood drama, just a gentle exit for a man who had lived through storms. His ashes were scattered across the plains of Colorado, not far from the jailhouse where a small boy learned that every soul, even the broken ones, deserved compassion. It was a return to the beginning, a circle quietly completed. And when people look back on him now, they don't remember the grudges or the battles or the shadows. They remember the voice, the heart, the loyalty, the man who never chased fame, only respect. In a business built on illusions, Ken Curtis remained the rarest thing of all, a legend who stayed honest. Which part of Ken Curtis's hidden journey surprised you the most? The betrayals, the battles, or the quiet strength he carried until the end?
When he seen the sea, see,